Last week, we discussed a number of guys that were drafting in the early rounds, a number of guys that were fading in the early rounds. But as we all know, everybody's favorite topic is the sleepers. Who are we drafting in the late rounds? Me and Danny have done a number of underdog drafts so far. I'm sure you guys are probably watching this to get ahead of your league mates in your home redraft leagues as well. And we're going to talk about 10 players today, or maybe even more than that, because we've grouped a couple players together that we're taking in the late rounds for high upside options, as well as just spike weeks for best ball drafts if you guys are doing them right now. So, Danny, I'm excited to get into this one. We've got a lot of guys that have some, projectable ceilings, some guys that obviously are very volatile, but should be some fun cases to break down. So without further ado, if you guys enjoy, leave a like, comment, subscribe, check out Underdog Fantasy to get some early values on these players. And of course, when you sign up, use the promo code FSE for up to $250 in bonus cash, as well as a special pick'em entry. And of course, when you sign up over there, you get our draft guide for free, which will be coming out on July 1st. But with that being said, let's get into it. All right, so as we were constructing this list, me and Danny both noticed that we're quite high on the New England Patriots relative to ADP. I mean, part of the reason why I'm smashing the draft button on these players is because they're so damn cheap. And there is reason for optimism in New England. And we can start with the third overall pick in the NFL draft as part of the reason for that optimism.
Have we not learned from CJ Stroud last year not to take the talented top 3 overall pick in his surrounding cast? Like, Drake May is going off the board. He is my first must draft late round sleeper right now. Going off the board as the 199th overall player over in Underdog Fantasy. And my first 2 players I'm grouping together as hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. Corey will do with his first 2 players as well. But I have Drake May, 199 overall ADP. Demario Douglas, his wide receiver, going off the board 177.5 overall on Underdog. And with Drake May, he was my easy quarterback 2 in the class. He was closer to Caleb than any other quarterback was to him. And if you followed us this offseason, you'll know exactly why we are all in on Drake May, potentially changing the narrative, the complexion of what people pretty much view the New England offense as. Going into last year, nobody thought the Texans offense was going to be good. Everybody thought rookie quarterback, unproven receiving core. What's the volume going to look like? And then the Texans just so happened to be one of the league-winning offenses at value in fantasy last year. I think New England is next on the docket for Drake May. Again, like I said, if you guys were following us in the Dynasty offseason, you'll know that he was both of our 103s. We view him as an elite franchise blue chip level prospect. And I just don't understand why people have such a problem with him. He's young. He's 6'5", 220 pounds, rocket arm, 800 rushing yards as a true sophomore in his first year starting at UNC once he took over for Sam Howell. I view Drake May as the next franchise quarterback. Yeah, sure, it's a big projection to say he will be the next CJ Stroud. But if there was going to be a quarterback going cheap, obviously everybody knows Caleb Williams is going to be a stud. He's going off the board as a top 12 quarterback, but everybody seems to be disrespecting Drake May. Like, he's viewed as a quarterback 3 right now over on Underdog. And I'll talk about one of his wide receivers. You'll talk about a couple of his wide receivers in a second, but I really do feel like he has an underrated supporting cast. The wide receiver trio we're going to mention, Hunter Henry, I think, is a fine tight end. Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson in the backfield. I really do feel like with Alex Van Pelt now running the offense, the New England offense has a direction, has an identity going into the season. And before I get into the New England wide receiver I'll talk about, the first 2 guys you have listed here are a pair of rookies that were drafted by the New England Patriots with Javon Baker and with Jalen Polk.
Yeah, the hole you can poke into Drake May specifically on underdog drafts especially is that maybe he doesn't start the whole season. And that's why you don't want to be taking zeros for like 6 or 7 games potentially if Jacoby Brissett is the starter. I tend to believe that he'll get on the field sooner rather than later. And regardless, when we're talking about his wide receivers, it doesn't really matter because whether Brissett is starting 6 games, 4 games, 8 games, who cares? I'm drafting a lot of Jalen Polk and Javon Baker because in this receiving core, there is absolutely no proven targets. You like Demario Douglas, Jalen Polk, and Javon Baker are solid prospects. Again, they're not elite prospects by any means. And you could also make the argument that there's depth receivers on this team that are half decent as well. But somebody's going to return value here. And I think when you look at it this way, this is why I like Jalen Polk specifically the most of this wide receiver core. He had the highest draft capital, right? 37th overall. When you look at where he was selected in the NFL draft, you have Keon Coleman, who was drafted near him, Ladd McConkey, who was drafted near him at the top of the second round. Both of those guys, they went to better teams. They went to better offenses where Josh Allen and Justin Herbert, respectively. We just believe way more in those guys as quarterbacks. But what happens if Jalen Polk is just as good of a prospect as those guys, or maybe even better in the NFL? Because I think he is a great fit for the Patriots offense, what they're going to ask him to do. And Polk has a chance to carve out a number one receiver role in this offense. And we could have, to your CJ Stroud kind of point, a CJ Stroud, Tank Dell type of situation where with Javon Baker, it's the same thing too. They're going so late. Jalen Polk is like a 13th, 14th round pick. Javon Baker, 17th, 18th round pick.
Same with Douglas.
Opportunity in front of them that if they're talented, they're going to come in and they're going to produce right away as depth wide receivers. And especially on a site like Underdog, where receiver talent is so expensive. If you want any receiver who projects decently, you got to pay up for them. If you can hit on a guy like this in the late rounds, it's really going to go a long way to help fill out your receiver depth on your team and maybe allow you to go a little bit more running back heavy early on.
Yeah, and as you guys know, if you're following the Dynasty offseason with us, big fan of Polk, big fan of Baker myself. But my bet to lead the team in targets specifically for this upcoming season, again, in the long term, I would rank them personally having Baker, having Polk ahead of Demario Douglas. But for specifically this season, I still like Demario Douglas to be their number one target on this team in terms of just raw volume. Yes, outside snaps, probably favor Polk and Baker given their stature, given their play style. But in terms of when they're in 11 personnel and they need that consistent chain mover, I really do like what Demario Douglas brings to the table. And you don't have to have conviction with which Patriots receiver will be the one, because all of them are so damn cheap that even if they alternate weeks of who's the one, who's the two, who's the three, if Drake May is a quarterback we think he can be, they're all going to be good investments at their current valuations. With Demario Douglas, the reason that he is my current favorite of this wide receiver core is is going into his second year versus being a rookie. You're avoiding some of that volatility of the rookie curve. Again, I love both of those players, but we saw Demario Douglas play in the NFL last year, and we saw him down the stretch last year once he became a full-time player in week 7, command 6.8 targets per game once he became that full-time starter. And according to Matt Harmon's reception perceptions in-season report, he graded relatively well, as you guys can see on the screen. Graded extremely well, especially in intermediate, short routes, obviously the slants, the flats, the screens. Like, he's a smaller stature player. He's a quick twitch, yards after catch player. Obviously, that's going to be where he's making his hay. But as you can see, he was green on the comeback. He was green on the corner route. He was yellow on the out. He was yellow on the curl. And on top of that, the main routes that he was weak at, the 9 route, the post route, the dig route, I'll tell you what, adding Drake May to the field is going to increase your efficiency running those deep routes. Because guess what? When you're catching passes from Bailey Zappi or Mac Jones versus Drake May throwing the ball down the field, that's going to be a big impact. And we saw Demario Douglas be able to be a consistent separator specifically against man coverage last year. And I think he could play the Josh Allen role for this offense. And to be honest, he also reminded me a little bit of a young Deontay Johnson in his rookie year. Ultimately, we saw Deontay take that step in his second year, like I think Douglas can this season.
Yeah, regardless of what guy you like, Polk, Baker, Demario Douglas, all of these guys could pay off at ADP. Like, I would imagine one of them will probably crush their ADP. One of them will probably be solid. And then maybe you get a week or two spike week out of the other guy. And honestly, like, the price is so cheap that I'm okay taking stabs on any one of these guys because I can make a narrative. Javon Baker is a downfield big play threat. Drake May's got a big arm. You can make the narrative for him. Jalen Polk, also very good over the middle of the field. You can make that narrative for him. So with all these guys, I'm taking swings. Yeah, so I think we've exhausted the Patriots offense as a potentially undervalued stack in drafts and just in general too. If you guys are watching this for home league preparation, Jalen Polk's a good sleeper to go after. Javon Baker's a good sleeper to go after. Demario Douglas a good sleeper to go after. Just pick your flavor. Which guy do you like? Speaking of an offense that we think is kind of undervalued at this point in time, Audric, Estime, and Troy Franklin, both members of the Denver Broncos, are two of my highest rostered players. In fact, both my highest rostered running back and my highest rostered wide receiver. This offense is priced among the league worst for a reason, right? You got Bo Nix coming in. People didn't really feel that great about him as a prospect. There's unknown pieces around Bo Nix, but Sean Payton carried them to like 19th highest scoring offense in the NFL last year. Bo Nix should be able to come in from day one and probably be decent because he was the most experienced quarterback in the entire draft. He had the most starts, and I feel like both of us agreed that he's probably not the highest ceiling prospect in the world, but he can come out and maybe keep the offense on schedule and get things moving and throw the ball accurately. The things he does well translate well to the NFL quickly. The reason I'm hammering the draft button specifically on Estime and Franklin is that both of these guys fell in the draft further than they should have for reasons mainly that derive from the NFL scouting combine, where Audric Estime ran slow. Troy Franklin had like a bad gauntlet drill, but both of these guys were day 2 caliber prospects that fell to day 3. In fact, Audric Estime is the best day 2 or day 3 running back that has ever gone on day 3, according to the running back prospect model that I broke down a couple weeks ago. And Troy Franklin, about a month ago, I broke down in the wide receiver edition. He was the best wide receiver to go on day 3 as well. So in my estimation, the Broncos got good value on these players, and there's opportunity in front of both of them. Outside of Cortland Sutton, that's a wide open wide receiver core. Marvin Mims, yeah, he was a higher draft pick, but it's not like he's done a whole lot in the NFL. Josh Reynolds was signed, not like he's going to be a huge progress stopper if Franklin is the guy I think he can be. Not to mention, he already has chemistry with his quarterback because he played with him for 2 years in college. And then with Audric Estime, you have Javonte Williams. There's rumors that he's not performing super well. Jaleel McLaughlin was a UDFA. I mean, I think I look at Estime, and at the very least, he's a Javonte handcuff. And best case scenario, he could win out this backfield. And then with Troy Franklin, I think because he already has chemistry with the quarterback, because he was a pretty, underdrafted wide receiver prospect relative to how good of a prospect he was, I think these guys represent good swings late in drafts.
Yeah, no, I agree as well. Audric Estime was a top 4 graded running back for me. Troy Franklin, a top 10 graded wide receiver for me once we did our film grades over in our scouting cycle for the 2024 NFL draft. Obviously, like you said, both fall for various reasons. I have optimism about this offense. Again, we both think that Sean Payton is a very good offensive guru of a coach, and Bo Nix was the perfect fit to run his offense, an efficient distributor. And in terms of fantasy, you'd almost rather an efficient distributor than like a Josh Allen, than like a mega creator that adds value to themselves, that can create out of the pocket, that can, add in 40, 50 rushing yards per game. Yes, that's valuable overall, but having the efficient distributor that maybe isn't going to give you a ton in the rushing game for Bo Nix, but is going to be able to make the right read, that's all you really need for a support system. I mean, heck, Drew Brees made his hay on that in the Sean Payton offense for a good 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, exactly. If he can just be like Baker Mayfield or Geno Smith, like that would be totally fine for the rest of this Broncos offense. And like I said, there's value to be had here. I think this offense could be better than people think, maybe the 20th or 25th best offense in the league. But right now, they're being priced as if they're going to be the stone cold worst offense, 14, 15 point per game scoring offense. And I just think they'll be a little bit better than that. They have good coaching, good protection, an experienced, even though he's a prospect and a young quarterback, he had a lot of college experience to come in and maybe produce right away. So I feel pretty good about the Broncos situation, and Estime and Troy Franklin are the 2 guys I've been hammering from that team.
Yeah, no, I'm on the same page as you. Anytime they fall in drafts, again, they're currently at really good value. You're getting them in the last couple rounds. I noticed Troy Franklin's probably a little bit more expensive. I noticed he usually goes, round 15, round 16, but Estime specifically, like I've seen him being available consistently in round 18. You need the upside between the tackles, grinder, behind a shaky starting running back. Audric Estime is your guy. So I'm on the same page there. My next player I will go into, and you guys see the jerseys behind me. I mean, I had to talk about a Cowboy at one point, but I think I got validity here. Jalen Tolbert of my Dallas Cowboys going off the board as the 200th overall player. And I understand it. Do I think Jalen Tolbert is a very good receiver? No. However, is he expected to be the Cowboys wide receiver 3 and contribute as an outside boundary wide receiver in what should be a top 5 to 10 offense in the league? Abso-freaking-lutely. The Cowboys have been a top 5 scoring team every year Dak has been healthy since 2019 and are the number 1 scoring offense in the 2023 NFL season. Michael Gallup was cut this offseason. Last year, it was kind of a rotational wide receiver 3 by committee between him and Jalen Tolbert, but Jalen Tolbert really showing signs of life down the stretch. 17th round opportunity cost for a starting wide receiver on what should be one of the best passing offenses in the NFL is just simply a button I am clicking every single time. We know CeeDee Lamb is elite. We know Jake Ferguson is going to be a solid tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Brandon Cooks is the only other wide receiver to compete with for touches. And we're talking about a wide receiver in Brandon Cooks who's often injured, who's getting older. Again, smaller wide receiver. We've seen the lower body concerns over these last couple of years for him that if Cooks missed any time, you're looking at the 3rd pass catching target on a legitimate top end offense. So for me with Jalen Tolbert, the implied upside of the situation, knowing that he is going to be getting consistent snaps for this offense, makes it such an easy button to click once you get in round 17, round 18. And like we mentioned with the Patriots wide receivers, because wide receivers so far pushed up the board on underdog, getting a guy with this amount of upside that is going to play a role in a top offense off the board as the wide receiver 90 basically in drafts, I'm just not turning that down.
He's definitely a best ball specific
Absolutely
take here. I think in managed redraft leagues, he's probably not draftable because he probably doesn't have the type of ceiling that you're going to feel good about starting each and every week without a Brandon Cooks injury. So if you're in round 17, round 18 of a best ball draft and you have 7 wide receivers already and you're looking to tack on a guy, maybe you have some Eagles or Cowboys for that week 17 correlation, Tolbert makes sense from that perspective. But in managed leagues, I'm probably not going anywhere near him. He's more so I can't take a 0 with my 17th round pick at wide receiver. So I'm going to take Jalen Tolbert, who projects to be at least on the field 75, 80% of the routes for a top offense.
And for what it's worth, I do feel like he played a lot better down the stretch. He made a couple nice catches, specifically a touchdown catch in the Washington game, week 18. Again, we're drafting 16th, 17th round best ball picks. Just being attached to the Cowboys offensive alone should push his ADP closer to the 14th to 15th round. I mean, going into his rookie season, he was being selected ahead of Garrett Wilson. Now, that never made sense at the time, but it kind of goes to show you that, man, the role we expected for Jalen Tolbert as a rookie was some that people were willing to take in the 10th, 11th round. You're getting a big discount here when he goes in round 17.
Yeah, and it's not all that different from the role that he was projected to have that year. So, yeah, it definitely makes some sense. The next guy that I have, I think, makes a little bit more sense for both best ball and managed leagues alike, because these are the types of running backs that we like to click at the end of managed league drafts as well when we've gone hero RB, zero RB, or whatever. And that's Dameon Pierce, running back of the Houston Texans. And this one's pretty simple for me, because if you looked at from now to last year's biggest fallers in fantasy ADP across all formats, best ball, dynasty, whatever, Dameon Pierce's name would be near the top of that list, because in one calendar year, he went from a top 10 to 12 dynasty running back, a guy that we were all excited to draft, to somebody that nobody cares about anymore. And Joe Mixon comes in, he got extended. He's going to be the starting running back for this team, most likely. But Joe Mixon is older. He has 1,800 career touches under his belt. He is definitely prone to miss a couple of games here and there, or potentially a lot of time. Not to mention, like I said, Dameon Pierce was a guy that we all believed in at one point. He may have a standalone role in best ball, punch in a couple touchdowns here and there, whatever the case is, but he has a ton of contingent upside, both for redraft managed leagues as a bench stash, as well as best ball 17th, 18th round selection like he is, where if you have a 5 or a 6 running back build and you need to tack on a handcuff to get some upside, I think Dameon Pierce makes a lot of sense. And this is an offense where nobody is going to be paying attention to Dameon Pierce. If Mixon were to miss 10 games next year and this offense used Dameon Pierce as their starting running back, the defense is worried about Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. They are not worried about Dameon Pierce. So he's going to have light boxes. He's going to have goal line opportunities. I don't find a huge difference in Dameon Pierce in round 17, round 18, where he goes, and Zach Charbonnet, Blake Corum, Kendre Miller, Marshawn Lloyd, who are all round 10, round 11 picks. The only difference is that we feel better about those guys. They're easier clicks. The vibes are better around those guys than Dameon Pierce. But essentially, all of those guys are contingent value upside who might have a tiny standalone role.
Yeah, the difference between their ADP versus Dameon Pierce right now is because people are going to select the button to draft Dameon Pierce, see 2.9 yards per carry, and then get spooked off. That is why it's happening, because people see how inefficient he was in his second year. And I get it. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Was Dameon Pierce was the same running back as he was as a rookie? Absolutely fucking not. It took him way too long to get adjusted to the Bobby Slowick new scheme. However, though, with a full other offseason, with a full bad season under his belt, I still think the talented Dameon Pierce that everybody was talking about as one of the biggest ascending running backs in the NFL after his first year still exists from a talent perspective. It's just a matter of getting him familiar with that scheme. Again, this was a guy that didn't handle a lot of touches in college, so a schematic shift in his second year in the league was always going to be a tough hurdle to overcome. And when you're looking at the depth of that team, outside of Joe Mixon and Dameon Pierce, are we really worried about, Dare Ogunbowale, Jawar Jordan, J.J. Taylor commanding touches?
Jawar Jordan's like 3 years older than Dameon Pierce, and he was in this rookie class.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, right? So, like, Dameon Pierce, I feel very confident to be the clear-cut number 2 handcuff to Joe Mixon. And who knows, man? Joe Mixon showed some signs of inefficiency. Maybe this is the year he breaks down, like you're saying. I'm in on Dameon Pierce as well. We just recorded, obviously, the RB's 9-15 video. And spoiler alert, Jonah Coleman was on it. And I literally said, Jonah Coleman reminded me of what Dameon Pierce was in his rookie season. And hint, hint, nudge, wink, wink, I'm a big Jonah Coleman fan.
Yeah, Dameon Pierce is a good player, man. That's all it comes down to. In the round 17, round 18 range, is there players that I've seen high-level NFL production on the board very often? And the answer is not usually. No. That's why I think Dameon Pierce, again, chaos of the NFL season, especially at running back, buy into the chaos is something that we always talk about. Dameon Pierce in best ball formats, I don't think he's a zero. Unless Mixon stays healthy all 17 games and he's a workhorse 80% snap share guy, which is possible, but I don't think it's likely. I think Dameon Pierce is either going to have a couple weeks here and there, or maybe we get a 4-game stretch in the fantasy playoffs where he's the starting running back because Mixon broke down. And that's how you get a nutted range of outcomes for Dameon Pierce. It's not like Mixon has to miss the entire season for Pierce to hit. If he's just down week 17 and Pierce is a starter in week 17, where all of the money is in Best Ball Mania 5, that could be enough to win you a crap ton of money. And like I said, in redraft managed leagues, I think he's a fine upside swing as well. So what are you looking at with your next player here?
Yeah, my next player, if you guys, I mean, it just so happens to be all the guys it seems like we're talking about in this video for the most part are guys that we talked about a lot in the Dynasty offseason. But if you guys were following along, if you remember who my RB7 was, Tyrone Tracy, newly of the New York Giants, going off the board as the 189th overall player over on Underdog Fantasy. And don't get it twisted. I do expect Devin Singletary to be the starter in New York, at least early on. But I view Tyrone Tracy as my pet cat, of course, of the 2024 draft cycle, with great athleticism, with a 3-down skill set. That should earn him the primary backup role. Again, he was one of the most elusive backs in the entire class. Fun stat from his season over at Purdue, 71% of his rush yards this year were created after contact, meaning that, quite frankly, the Purdue offensive line wasn't giving him much up front, and Tyrone Tracy was creating nearly all of his yardage. My comp for him coming out was a guy like Tony Pollard, and I think he has the opportunity to settle in early on, maybe take a thing or two from Singletary from the cerebral portion of the game. Again, this is still a raw running back, first couple years playing running back at the final portion of his Purdue career, and we ultimately saw that he has the natural athletic profile. He's an elite athlete, and he has the ability and the elusive profile to be a legitimate fantasy starter should Devin Singletary miss any time. Quite frankly, Eric Gray and Deshaun Corbin absolutely stink. And like I said, I had Tyrone Tracy as a top 7 overall running back. So the fact that I'm getting him with my second last pick of drafts, I'm taking that swing every single time because I do think he's a very talented player with the opportunity to play on all 3 downs should Singletary miss time.
Yeah, I think part of what helps with Tracy too is I think he kind of does protect against a zero a little bit in a best ball frame of mind, because he could play on special teams. He could be a slot receiver or whatever. Like, they could use him in a variety of ways. Even if Singletary is a 70-80% opportunity share guy, I think Tracy could find his way on the field. I will say I'm more likely to just say that this raw running back is probably not going to make a big impact his rookie season, and Singletary's probably undervalued. That's kind of more my stance on the Giants backfield. But at the same time, it's not like Singletary's a world beater. Like, if Tracy is a great player and he gets up to speed pretty quickly, it wouldn't shock me at all if this was a 50-50 timeshare by week 7.
For what it's worth, I don't even hate Singletary's value currently. It's just more so the 189th overall ADP. Like, people view it as an ambiguous backfield right now, but I just think so clearly that Tyrone Tracy will win out the second job. And similar, like you said, to Dameon Pierce, obviously Dameon Pierce more proven, but with Tyrone Tracy, if he is the second running back on this team with the tackle breaking ability, with the 3rd down ability, I mean, Devin Singletary has missed time in these last couple of years. If he misses any games, I think Tyrone Tracy can give you fantasy starter level production in that time frame.
Yeah, I feel like I've bet against Devin Singletary before, and he's held off more backs than we give him credit for in terms of like the workload. Like, he held off James Cook early on in his career. He held off Dameon Pierce last year. Like, he outright won the job over him. So for me, I think Devin Singletary is a little bit of an underrated talent. Where Tracy goes is where the next guy that I'm going to talk about goes. And it's kind of also where Dameon Pierce and Audric Estime go too. So I'm just less likely to click the button on Tracy than opposed to these other guys. And unless you have anything else on Tracy, I can transition right into my next guy here, which is J.K. Dobbins. And I'm aware everybody's going to go to the comments like, don't you know he tore his Achilles? I'm like, yeah, I'm well aware that he tore his Achilles, but Here's why I like J.K. Dobbins, because if you remove the torn Achilles, which obviously we cannot.
You can't do that.
You can't do it because it's obviously a major factor for why his price is so low. But he has confirmed that he's 100% healthy. He will be ready for training camp. So that is a check in his category. That's great news. Number two, this backfield is wide open. He's beaten out Gus Edwards multiple times, coming off of multiple big injuries before, and he can do it again. Number three, even if the curse of the Achilles tear gets J.K. Dobbins and he's inefficient this year, I think this offense will run the ball enough and has enough touches available that even if he's inefficient, he can give you spike weeks in round 16, round 17, round 18, where he goes in best ball leagues. And also, if there's the 10% chance that he is the J.K. Dobbins of old, he could crush his ADP. Now, I don't think it's likely. I don't think it's likely that he's going to come back and be 2021 J.K. Dobbins and everything's going to be hunky-dory, because the running back Achilles tear data is real. It's real legit, and you don't want to mess with it. But in the 16th, 17th round, where I feel like I'm protected against a zero, to be honest, I think between Kamani Vidal and Gus Edwards, worst case scenario for this backfield is that it's a three-way timeshare, and Dobbins will give you 2 or 3 spike weeks here and there. And I think that's okay in round 16, round 17. So for me, I think the floor is a lot higher than people think from a best ball standpoint. And even in managed redraft leagues, if he's not the J.K. Dobbins of old, you just cut bait with him after like week 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a decent bit of J.K. Dobbins specifically because, like you said, once you're paying, similar to, honestly, my views with Tyrone Tracy, where I just want to bet on guys that can make people miss. And again, I would rather have Tracy because I know he's healthy coming into the year versus J.K. Dobbins. Again, at his peak, better talent. I'm not going to deny that. I thought J.K. Dobbins could have been arguably a top 3 to 5 running back in the NFL should he have stayed healthy. But it's a little bit risky. Again, I have a good amount of ownership regardless, so I do agree because, quite frankly, once you're paying a 16th, 17th round price tag, you need 2 usable weeks to make up for that opportunity cost. And quite frankly, even if he is in a 3-way timeshare, he punches in a couple touchdowns in a couple weeks, you're looking at a guy who just pays off at ADP. And of course, the upside being the rare instance where he does become the lead guy. Well, guess what? You might have a potential top 24 running back on your hands.
Yeah, not to mention, like, these tournaments are structured where all the money is at the top late in the season. So even if J.K. Dobbins is a slow ramp up at the beginning of the year, Gus Edwards is the guy you need early in the season. What happens if Gus Edwards deals with injury, Kamani Vidal's not it, whatever the case is, maybe J.K. Dobbins, as he's done in years past, I might add, runs hot at the end of the season. Yeah,
100%. And I mean, we've seen him come back from the injuries and still look solid. Obviously, again, the Achilles is another hurdle to overcome, but I mean, this guy's is basically dealt with injuries throughout his NFL career. So just kind of speaks volumes to his work ethic. If there's somebody that's going to overcome the Achilles tear, it's going to be the one that, quite frankly, has a work ethic of J.K. Dobbins. We even saw it in his Ohio State tenure, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. So who's your other guy here? I know you got a tight end on your list. I got a quarterback that I'll talk about after.
I got a tight end, and I was going to end off with a tight end, but I do want to also make reference to one more running back, so I added him.
I have another honorable mention after this too, so we'll do 2 more honorable mentions after this.
Right, so 2 more each?
Yeah, just like this is the in-depth one. I have one more in-depth one, and then we'll do a kind of brief honorable mention because I have a tight end that I like too.
Okay, so I'll just go straight into my tight end, and we completely agree on this guy. We both think he is the most talented tight end on his team. For a team that I think has an MVP caliber quarterback and what should be one of the top 5 to 10 offenses in the league with an ambiguous wide receiver core. If you guys didn't put 2 and 2 together yet, I'm talking about Tucker Kraft of the Green Bay Packers, 214 overall ADP. And look, I get it. Everybody is on the side of Luke Musgrave as the Packers starter based on their respective ADP. Musgrave going off the board in, the 151, I believe, area. Tucker Kraft clearly going a good amount after him, but I don't understand why. People think Luke Musgrave is just the sure bet, tight end 17 off the board, to be the starting tight end for the Green Bay Packers. But when you actually look at both of their rookie seasons respectively, between Musgrave, Kraft had the higher yards per target, the higher yards per route run, and when both were on the field in the playoffs, it was actually Tucker Kraft who played 80+% of the snaps in their 2 playoff games and commanded 9 targets in those 2 games. For a very ambiguous situation, again, I'm not going to sit here and say I am for certain saying Tucker Kraft will be the starting tight end for the Green Bay Packers, but I will say when I don't have to make the bet on the guy going 70 picks earlier, I will take the cheaper option every time. On top of that, I just straight up think Tucker Kraft is going to be the better player. Again, very ambiguous situation, not only in the tight end position, but also in the wide receiver core. Not a clear Devontae Adams in that core, CeeDee Lamb in that core. A lot of guys that, quite frankly, can bounce usage on a week-to-week basis. I like Jayden Reed the most, but if you told me Tucker Kraft got 9 targets one week, or Romeo Doubs got 7 targets one week, or Christian Watson got 7 targets one week, I wouldn't bat eye, because ultimately I think this is a wide receiver core that can play overall. But I do think Tucker Kraft is the best tight end on this team. I think Jordan Love is on an MVP level trajectory, a guy who in his first year starting was second in the league in touchdown passes to Dak Prescott, arguably was the hottest quarterback down the stretch in the entirety of the NFL. This is just a situation I want to bet on. And when you're talking about a last round of the draft, 214th overall opportunity cost, why wouldn't I take the rookie tight end that impressed when he was on the field?
Yeah, exactly. I really expected the ADP to be a lot tighter between these two guys, knowing that, like you said, in the playoff games, they actually went with Kraft over Musgrave. I preferred Kraft, the prospect. Even though Musgrave was drafted higher, Kraft was much more productive. Even though he was at a smaller school, he was a similar athlete. Like, there wasn't really anything that Musgrave did better to me outside of the fact that he was drafted in round 2 and Kraft was drafted in round 3. So I said it at the time, back in the rookie sleepers video last offseason for dynasty purposes, that this could be a Hayden Hurst, Mark Andrews situation. And I do believe it is the case. I think that the one that you want is Tucker Kraft. It is not Luke Musgrave, especially when Tucker Kraft is the cheaper of the two.
Especially knowing the context of their wide receiver core and how they thrive. Yes, Jayden Reed is an intermediate target, but outside of Jayden Reed, Wickster works down the field. Watson works down the field. Romeo Doubs works down the field. Tucker Kraft, you can make the case as an intermediate target, is their second best intermediate target on the team. He is a much better yards after catch player than Luke Musgrave. Yes. Is Luke Musgrave better purely down the seam than Tucker Kraft? Sure.
I don't even think that's a guarantee, to be honest.
But like that, like people who are high on Musgrave view the athletic profile, view the seam busting ability. That's why they're hyping.
They're both like 9.5 RAS score tight ends. They're both extremely athletic.
I'm just trying to apply what the counter argument might be to the case for those who are pro Musgrave. I agree with you.
Yeah, exactly. Either way, you don't have to make the decision at face value. You can just take the cheaper option, who, in my opinion, projects as the starter anyway. So yeah, Tucker Kraft, I'm all over that. He's my highest rostered tight end right now. If you didn't take him, I definitely would have. One of my highest rostered quarterbacks right now, and this makes me extremely uncomfortable because this is a guy that is just, I'm picking all the unpopular takes today because I got Achilles tear running back. I got, sex offender quarterback that I'm talking about here. I get nobody wants to talk about Deshaun Watson and give him any kind of flowers for anything, but I don't play in like points per moral victory leagues. And what I see with Deshaun Watson on the board right now is a former multi-time top 5 quarterback finisher who is going outside of the top 145, 150 overall picks in ADP, who has good receiving talent around him. Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. They have other depth wide receivers in the draft that they've gotten the last couple of years. A good run game, whether it's Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, whoever else, Deontay Foreman. And he has a good offensive line. He's got a good scheme. He's got a good coaching staff. And you're picking pocket passers around him. You're picking Aaron Rodgers coming off of an Achilles tear at 40 years old. You're picking Smith and Baker Mayfield and Will Levis around him. And I look at a sharp market like Underdog Fantasy, and we simply never get mobile quarterbacks this late in the draft. Take a look at Jaden Daniels' ADP, for example. He's a rookie and on a terrible team with Cliff Kingsbury calling the plays, and he's like a top 100 pick. You simply don't get guys with this type of rushing upside who have been proven top-end quarterbacks in fantasy this late. I don't think we're ever going to see Houston Texans Deshaun Watson ever again. Maybe we do. Maybe there's a 10% chance that happens. But even if we only see 75, 80% of what he used to be in Houston, we're talking about a back-end quarterback one who has rushing upside for a team that projects very well. They were a 12-win team last year with one of the best defenses in the league, and Watson was banged up. And if he just stays healthy, I think he can return this ADP, let alone if he's actually the same player he was in Houston. So I've been burned by Deshaun Watson before, but I can't quit this guy at this price tag. He's sandwiched in between a 40-year-old with an Achilles tear and Geno Smith. Like, that's the price tag we're talking about here. If he was where Tua and Trevor Lawrence were going, which is probably where he should be going based on how he projects, I would say absolutely take Tua and Trevor Lawrence over him, but that's not where he's going.
No, I agree with you as well. Obviously, the character concerns, people are worried he didn't look like the same Deshaun last year. That's why his ADP is falling. But like you said, we both think that the Browns offense is going to be very good, assuming health on this team. They have good wide receivers. They obviously trade for Jerry Jeudy, sign him to that mega deal. Still have Elijah Moore. Again, is Elijah Moore the player I thought he was maybe 2 years ago? No. Is he a solid, wide receiver 3-4 for this team, especially given the context? They have Jerry Jeudy, they have Amari Cooper, they have David Njoku. Absolutely. When you're talking about overall offensive support systems, given the fact that he has Kevin Stefanski calling the plays, he has a good offensive line in front of him, he has multiple weapons, and on top of that, his stud running back is coming off a big-time knee injury. So they need him to play like Houston Texans Deshaun Watson, at least for the early portion of the year. Again, we both believe in Nick Chubb potentially being the one to, axe the ACL tear because he's just that freak of a nature of an athlete. But for at least the early portion of the year, there's no excuses for Deshaun Watson not to have higher volume.
I think the thing I keep coming back to is like, he's a rushing quarterback, dude. He's a Konami code quarterback available this late. Even if he's not a good passer anymore, he can still run. So that's where I come back to it with Deshaun Watson, is that we don't get discounts on quarterbacks that can run very often. And the discount we're getting is for moral reasons and injury reasons, which are usually things that are not sticky year over year to somebody's production. So Watson is a guy that feels disgusting clicking the button on, but he absolutely should not be going as low as he is.
At the end of the day, when somebody's getting faded because of emotional and not factual reasons, you should probably press the button. And that's what Deshaun Watson's doing. Yeah,
exactly. So we do have a couple honorable mentions here. You mentioned a tight end in Tucker Kraft. One that I'm taking, and another one that is just plug your nose and click the button on him, is Cade Otton of my Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you know why I'm clicking the button on him? Would you care to guess how many tight ends had a higher route participation than Cade Otton last year without looking it up?
I'm not going to look it up, but I remember Cade Otton being a 90+% snap player for the majority of the year. So I'm going to guess he was probably the 4th most routes in the league.
He didn't miss a single route for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year. Yep. He was 100% route participation. There was no tight end that was higher in route participation than him. So he's a mid player. I get it. Would I have drafted him as high as we drafted him? No. But at this part of the draft, 170th overall where he's going, you're taking zeros at tight end often, very often. So the fact that I'm going to get a guy that's just on the field who could catch 5 touchdowns and 600 yards this year, that doesn't sound like a lot. And it's probably not for redraft. So I would say if you're in a home league, Cade Otton's probably not the type of guy that you want to draft. But if you're doing a 3 tight end build on an underdog draft, he is absolutely a part of my draft portfolio, because he's the type of guy that if you draft, let's say, a riskier guy like Brock Bowers or Kyle Pitts, you can pair Cade Otton with and cap it off at 2 tight ends. Or maybe you wait until late in the teens or whatever, and you take somebody who's a little bit riskier and you grab Cade Otton as your 2nd tight end, and you take an upside swing on Jonnu Smith as your 3rd tight end.
Yeah, no, I don't mind it. Again, it's a sexless pick. You're
totally
plug your nose.
Totally.
You're gonna realistically, the way you're taking Cade Otton is if you take, let's just say, Brock Bowers is your tight end 1, Isaiah Likely is your tight end 2, and you want some stability in the weeks that maybe they have their floors. But I'm fine with that. To me, he's the perfect tight end 3 if you're building a 3.
I think he's a great tight end 2, to be honest. Like if you have a Trey McBride, a Travis Kelce, somebody like that, Cade Otton is not going to get benched for anybody. He's going to have a solidified role for the whole year, because if you draft, let's say, Travis Kelce and you pair him with Isaiah Likely as your tight end 2, like he's not even going to start, right? Like you need a better tight end 2 than that. But I don't want to have to pay up for like Cole Kmet or Pat Fryer.
But that's what I mean.
I can get Cade Otton later on in the draft, who basically has the same exact projectable upside.
Like he's probably going to outscore Likely, but basically what I'm saying is you're drafting Likely before him because of the implied upside. If you wanted the safety to pair with a Likely for your 2 and 3, I think that would be a perfect combo.
Right. But I think a lot of people are very in on elite tight end this year, which is why elite tight end, you only want to draft 2 of them, right? If you draft a Trey McBride, you don't want to draft 3 tight ends typically. So you draft Trey McBride, you fade tight end all the way to Cade Otton, you grab him as your 2nd guy. You know he's not going to get benched. You know he's not going to be a super high upside pick, but maybe on an up season, an outlier season, he catches 7 touchdowns and give you some good weeks.
Yeah, no, I don't mind it. Again, the floor is very high. I have questions about the ceiling, but I mean, he was literally the tight end 20 in fantasy, and he probably goes right around, if not after that. So it's not like
he was also 2nd-year tight end last year. He could also just get better too. He's kind of like cheap Jake Ferguson
/ Dalton Schultz. I mean, Dalton Schultz, if I actually look at his in his first 2 seasons, care to guess how many receiving yards Dalton Schultz had?
I don't know, like 750,
122. Yeah. Yeah, so because that was around the time that there was oh my God, it was Blake Jarwin. Oh my God, what a throwback, Blake Jarwin, man, that was my guy. But either way, I'll go into my honorable mention. I had to make reference to this guy because I mean, it just kind of feels disrespectful if we don't, knowing how much we're drafting him. But Ty Chandler's ADP doesn't make sense to me. He's going off the board as the RB46, 144th overall player. Can you say for certain that Aaron Jones is going to outtouch Ty Chandler this year?
I would say if Jones stays healthy, he probably would certain outtouch Ty Chandler, but Aaron Jones has also been very banged up the last couple of years. So, I mean, if we're making a bet across the NFL, 32 starting running backs, who's the most likely to get injured? I bet Aaron Jones would be probably pretty high at the top of that list.
The injury factor is built into that case. Like, obviously, he would probably need a couple missed games from Aaron Jones, but like you kind of said, Aaron Jones missed 6 games last year. He missed 2 games in 2021, 3 games in 2020, 1 game in 2019, 5 games in 2018, 5 games in 2017. Like, he's missed time in his NFL career. And to be honest, Ty Chandler really impressed me last year. He looked like a professional running back that can carry the workload. I mean, we saw down the stretch, 15 opportunities, 14 opportunities, 15 opportunities, 27 opportunities, 8, 13, and 15 between weeks 10 and on. And he was really efficient on those touches. 4.52 yards per carry, 6.36 yards per target, 7.57 yards per reception aren't bad either, especially knowing that going into last year, everybody pretty much wrote Ty Chandler off. It was Alex Madison, and you were drafting Dwayne McBride as the second running back to that team. But Ty Chandler really showed out, really improved from his rookie season. And I think this is going to be a 1-2 punch. Again, I do agree Aaron Jones, when he's healthy, should be the one in this backfield. But it's not like Aaron Jones has been a dominant 75% opportunity share guy. Like, it's most likely going to be, at best, a 60-40 situation between Jones and Chandler.
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything else to add. I've been drafting a lot of Ty Chandler for the same reason. It's just likelihood that he plays a couple games, really, honestly. Like, he had 1 game, I think it was week 15 or week 16, where he was the lead back for Minnesota.
Cincinnati.
He had like 26 fantasy points in that game. Yeah. Like, if you get a couple just handcuff lone one-off performances from him, which again, Aaron Jones, over under, I would set on his amount of games he plays this year is like 13.5. Like, you're probably going to get a couple games out of Ty Chandler as the lead back there. So yeah, I like him as a, 5th running back and a running back build, or a 4th running back if I've gone really heavy on them early and I need some upside.
Yeah, basically a 12th, 13th round pick at that point. And knowing that he's a good player alone makes him worth a 13th, 14th round or 12th, 13th round valuation.
Yeah, absolutely. So we said we were going to talk about 10 players. I feel like we talked about like 12, 13 players. So if you guys enjoyed this video, if you got some value from it, leave a like down below, subscribe if you are new around here. Also, head on over to Underdog Fantasy, because all the guys that we talked about in this video are pretty much like, what was the earliest guy we talked about? Like Jalen Polk, like a 12th round pick or something like that. Most of the guys we talked about are very late picks over there. So if you like the cases we made for any of these players, you want to go get some exposure to these guys, head on over to Underdog Fantasy, use the promo code FSE when you sign up, and you'll get $250 in bonus cash to play with on the site, as well as a free pick'em special. And when you sign up using our promo code, you will get our redraft, Dynasty, and Dynasty film breakdowns, the 2 guides, and then the Dynasty film breakdowns of the rookies for free for just a $10 deposit using promo code FSE. So it's a win-win-win for you. You get to get a lot of practice for your home leagues. You could potentially win a shit ton of money in Best Ball Mania 5, 1.5 million to first, 100,000 to first in the puppy, which is just a $5 entry right now. And you get all of that extra bonus content for free as a thank you for using our promo code. So if that interests you, the link will be down below for that in the description of this video. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.